The snow came down sideways the night my own daughter locked the door behind me. I stood on the front porch of the house I'd paid the mortgage on for 31 years, listening to the deadbolt slide into place. My boots were the cheap ones, the rubber duck boots I wore for shoveling, not the lined ones for going anywhere. I had a canvas tote bag with a photo album in it, a pill organizer, my reading glasses, and the sweater that used to belong to my husband. That was everything I left with. My daughter Maribel had told me to grab what mattered. She gave me 4 minutes. I remember thinking very clearly that the porch light wasn't on. She'd turned it off before she opened the door. I walked down to the end of the driveway because I didn't know what else to do. The wind off Lake Champlain that night was the kind that gets inside your collar and stays there. I'm 68 years old. I was a kindergarten teacher in Burlington for 41 years. I taught 3 generations of children in that town how to hold a pencil, and that night not one of them drove past me. The road was empty. I want to be honest about something before I go any further. I knew, walking down that driveway, that my daughter was not the woman I raised. I'd known it for a while. I just couldn't say it out loud, not even to myself, because saying it meant admitting that I had failed at the one thing I always swore I'd be good at. Her name is Maribel Joy. I named her after my mother and my husband's mother, and when she was 4, she used to bring me dandelions in the morning and tell me they were sunshine I could keep in a cup. She married a man named Preston Hollis, an estate attorney in Montpelier, 6 years ago. After that, something changed. Or maybe it didn't change. Maybe it just stopped pretending. That night, I walked about 1.5 miles down Route 7 until I got to the bus shelter outside the closed-up garden center. The plexiglass was cracked and there was no door, but it broke the wind a little. I sat down on the metal bench and I cried for the first time in I don't know how long. Not loud crying, the kind where your face just leaks and your hands shake and you can't make a sound because if you make a sound, the whole thing becomes real. A man pulled over in a beat-up Ford. He was maybe 40, wearing a Carhartt jacket, and he looked at me like he'd seen this before. He didn't ask what happened. He just said, "Ma'am, there's a shelter on Pine Street. I can drop you, no charge." I told him I had somewhere to go. I lied. I didn't want him to see me up close in the light because I knew I'd be ashamed in a way that would never wash off. He nodded like he understood, reached into his console, and handed me a hand-warmer packet, the kind hunters use. You crack it. It heats up for 8 hours. Stay where there's a roof. His name was Dale. I never saw him again. I wanted on the record that the first kind person I met that night was a stranger in a work truck, and not anyone I'd given 40 years of my life to. I slept in that shelter for 2 nights. The 3rd night, the police came through, and the officer, a young woman, told me I couldn't stay there. She didn't say it mean. She said it like a daughter. She drove me to the women's shelter on Pine, and I gave them my driver's license, and they gave me a cot and a paper cup of instant coffee and a clean towel that smelled like bleach. I lay on that cot for the next 4 nights, and I tried to figure out how a kindergarten teacher with a paid-off house and a teacher's pension ended up here. So let me back up. My husband Roland died 8 years ago. Pancreatic cancer fast, the kind that doesn't give you time to plan. We had a will, but it was the kind people write when they're 40 and think they're going to live forever. Everything went to me, and after me, it was supposed to go to Maribel. Simple. Clean. I wasn't worried about it. The house was paid off. I had Roland's life insurance, about $210,000. I had my pension, which came to a little over $4,000 a month, and Social Security on top of that. I wasn't rich, but I was comfortable. I was the kind of comfortable where you don't have to think about money before you go to the grocery store. Maribel and Preston started coming over more after Roland died. At first I was grateful. I thought, well, at least I have my girl. Preston would bring printed-out articles about scams targeting widows, about elder fraud, about how seniors were getting taken advantage of by financial advisors. He'd sit at my kitchen table and explain things in that patient lawyer voice, like I was one of his elderly clients. I let him because I was lonely and grief made me stupid. About 2 years in, he asked me to sign a durable power of attorney. Just in case, he said. Just in case I had a stroke. Just in case I couldn't make decisions. He had it drafted up on his firm's letterhead. Maribel sat next to me on the couch and held my hand while I signed it. I didn't read it carefully. I'd known Preston for years. He was my son-in-law. That was my mistake. I want every woman my age watching this to hear that part twice. I didn't read it carefully. I'd known him for years. He was my son-in-law. A power of attorney that broad in the hands of someone like Preston is a loaded gun pointed at everything you own. I learned that later, much later. The first thing that happened was the refinance. About a year after I signed the POA, Preston came over and said the house needed some updates, and that it would be smart to do a cash-out refinance at the low interest rates. He'd handle the paperwork. I'd just need to sign in 2 places. I asked Maribel if she thought it was a good idea, and she said Preston knew what he was doing. The refinance pulled out $140,000 in equity. Preston said the money would go into a family trust to manage everything more efficiently. I never saw a statement for that trust. Every time I asked, Preston would say he'd email me the quarterly report. The email never came. After a while, I stopped asking, because asking made Maribel sigh in that exhausted way, like I was being paranoid. The next thing was the car. My Subaru Forester was 12 years old, and Preston said it wasn't safe anymore. He traded it in and put me in a leased SUV in his name for the insurance discount. I no longer owned a vehicle. The next thing was the bank accounts. Preston said he was consolidating them for tax purposes. He moved my checking, my savings, my CDs, all of it, into a joint account he had access to. He'd transfer me an allowance every 2 weeks. He called it an allowance. I'm a grown woman who taught 5-year-olds for 4 decades, and my son-in-law called my own money an allowance. By the time the 8th year hit, I had no car in my name, no bank account in my name, and a mortgage I didn't ask for on a house I'd paid off twice over. My pension and Social Security still came in, but they went straight into the joint account, and the allowance got smaller every year. Preston said the family trust was losing money in the market. He said it was just a rough patch. I want to tell you why I didn't see it. I see now that I'm telling it to you. I see exactly what was happening and exactly when. But at the time, I was 65 years old. I had just lost the man I'd been married to for 38 years, and I was grateful that my daughter was paying attention to me. Grief makes you stupid. Loneliness makes you trusting. And a son-in-law with a law degree and a clean shirt makes you feel like an idiot for asking questions. The night they put me out started with a phone call. Maribel called me at 5 in the evening and said she and Preston were coming over to talk. They showed up at 7 with a folder. Inside the folder was a document called a Voluntary Residential Transfer Agreement. Preston explained it in his patient voice. The house, he said, had become a financial liability. The new mortgage from the cash-out refinance was upside down. The property taxes had gone up. The maintenance was a sinkhole. The smart move was for me to transfer the deed to them and move into a more appropriate setting for my stage of life. They had already toured a place. It was called Maple Crest Assisted Living outside St. Albans. They put down a deposit. I told him I wasn't ready to leave my house. Preston said it wasn't really up to me. He had the POA. Maribel said I was being difficult. I asked them to leave. That's when Maribel locked the door behind me. I want to be clear about one detail because the comments on these kinds of stories always get hung up on this. They didn't physically push me out. Maribel told me in a voice I didn't recognize that if I didn't leave that night, they were going to call the county and have me evaluated for a mental health hold. She said Preston had a doctor friend who would back it up. She said it would be easier on everyone if I just took a walk and let things calm down. I knew in that moment that things calming down meant I would come back to find the locks changed and a Maple Crest van in the driveway. So I left. I took the canvas tote. I took the photo album because it was the closest thing to me on the shelf. I didn't even take my purse. My purse had been in Preston's car since the week before because he was helping me organize my paperwork. I spent 6 nights in shelters and bus stops before my sister found me. Her name is Coraline. We call her Cora. She's 72, 4 years older than me, and she lives in Naples, Florida, in a house with a screened porch and an orange tree in the yard. Cora and I had drifted, not because of anything bad, just because life pulls you in different directions, and you tell yourself you'll call this weekend, and then it's been 6 months. We had Christmas cards. We had birthday phone calls. We didn't have the closeness we had as girls. What I didn't know about Cora was this. After her second husband died in 2017, she inherited a substantial portfolio. He had founded a medical device company in Sarasota and sold it to a larger firm right before he passed. Cora was a very wealthy woman. She never said a word about it to me. Not once. She didn't change cars, she didn't change houses, she didn't change her life. The only thing she changed was that she started flying first class instead of coach, and only because of her hip. Cora found me because the women's shelter in Burlington has a missing persons coordinator, and the former student of mine, now a social worker, recognized my name on the intake form and made a phone call to Cora because she remembered me mentioning my sister in Florida at some parent-teacher conference 15 years earlier. Vermont is a small place. I taught a lot of children. They grew up, and some of them remembered me. On the 7th day, I was sitting in the common room of the shelter, drinking wheat coffee and trying to remember whether my homeowner's insurance was paid up on a house I no longer had access to, and the front desk worker said I had a visitor. Cora walked in wearing a navy blue coat and white pants, completely wrong for Vermont in February, and she looked at me and her face just collapsed. She didn't say anything for a long time. She just walked across the room and put her arms around me, and I remember thinking that she smelled like the same perfume our mother used to wear. We sat in the common room for 40 minutes. I told her everything. I tried to keep it short and dry and like I was reading a report, because I knew if I started crying I wasn't going to stop. And that shelter had a rule about emotional disturbances. Cora listened. She didn't interrupt. When I was done, she opened her purse and pulled out a phone and made one call. The call was to a lawyer in Burlington. Cora apparently already had a Vermont lawyer on retainer because she had property in Stowe she'd been thinking about selling. She told the lawyer my situation in about 6 sentences. Then she said, "I want everything reversed. Every document. Every signature. I want to know what's on him. And I want a restraining order on the daughter." I'd never heard her talk like that. The Cora I grew up with cried at Hallmark commercials. That night, she put me in a hotel. A real hotel, with a bathrobe on the back of the door and a kettle in the room. I took a shower so long the hot water ran out, and I sat on the edge of the bed in that bathrobe, and I felt something I hadn't felt in 8 years, which was that someone in this world cared whether I lived or died. The next morning, Cora flew us both to Naples. She wouldn't let me protest. She said Vermont winters were over for me for a while. We landed in 78 degrees and palm trees, and I cried in the rental car because the sky was so blue. I lived in her guest room for 3 weeks. During those 3 weeks, 3 things happened. First, the lawyer in Burlington unwound the power of attorney. It turned out Preston had drafted it with some language that didn't hold up under scrutiny. There were also some things he'd signed on my behalf that crossed the line from sketchy into criminal. The Vermont Attorney General's office got interested. Preston's law firm placed him on administrative leave. His license is currently under review. I'm told the review will not go well for him. Second, Cora bought me a condo. I want to tell you about this because the part of the story I never imagined was that my older sister, who I assumed lived on a fixed income like me, sat me down at her kitchen table on the 4th morning and slid an envelope across to me. Inside was a deed to a 2-bedroom condo on Marco Island, on the 3rd floor of a building called Sand Dollar Bay, with a view of the Gulf and a screened lanai and a small den I could turn into a craft room. She bought it outright that week, cash. I told her I couldn't accept it. She said, "Vivian, our father worked himself to death so his daughters wouldn't end up in shelters. I have more money than I will ever spend. You are going to take this condo, and you are going to take a check for $2 million to live on, and you are going to live. Do you hear me? You are going to live." My name is Vivian. I didn't say it before because I was embarrassed for you to know. People named Vivian aren't supposed to end up in homeless shelters. I took the condo. I took the check. I cried so hard at her kitchen table that the orange juice in front of me got watered down. Cora made the check out to a trust she'd already set up, with her attorney as the trustee, so that no one, not Preston, not Maribel, not anyone, could ever touch it without going through 3 layers of legal protection. She'd thought of everything. She told me later she'd been to a financial elder abuse seminar in Naples 2 years before because a friend's mother had been swindled, and she'd kept the notes. I want to say that part louder for the women watching who are scared this could happen to them. If you have assets, talk to a real attorney, not a relative who happens to be an attorney, about an irrevocable trust, about the difference between a durable POA and a springing POA, about who gets to make medical decisions. Write it down. Don't sign anything on your kitchen table at 7 in the evening with your daughter holding your hand. I am telling you what I wish someone had told me. Third, my daughter found me. I'd been on Markle Island for about 6 weeks. I'd started taking walks on the beach in the mornings. I'd joined a book club at the community center. I'd bought myself a wide-brimmed straw hat from a shop on the main road and a pair of real sandals. I was starting to feel like a person again. The doorbell rang on a Sunday afternoon in April. I looked through the peephole and saw Maribel and Preston standing in the hallway. Maribel was holding a bouquet of pink hydrangeas. Preston had a small gift bag. They were both smiling. I want you to know what I did. I did not open the door. I went to my phone and I called Cora. Cora was 3 blocks away. She arrived in 11 minutes with her attorney on speaker. I opened the door with the chain still on. Maribel's face was a performance. She had practiced it. I could tell because I'd seen her practice for school plays in our living room when she was 12. "Mom," she said. "Mom, we have been so worried. Preston and we made a terrible mistake. We were under so much stress and we said things and we did things and we want to make it right. Can we come in, please, just to talk?" Preston added, "Vivian, whatever was done, we want to fix. We brought flowers. We brought a peace offering." I didn't say anything. I just looked at them through the gap. My hands weren't shaking. That surprised me. Cora came up the hallway behind them. She was wearing a coral-colored blouse and she was holding a folder. She didn't say hello. She handed Maribel the folder. "That's a restraining order," she said. "It's effective as of yesterday. You are not permitted within 200 feet of my sister. There's also a copy of the criminal complaint filed in Chittenden County against your husband. The hearing is in 3 weeks. You'll want to be there, Maribel, because some of the charges name you as a co-conspirator." Maribel's face. I'm not going to describe Maribel's face because she's still my daughter, and I don't want to be that kind of mother, even now. I'll just say that the performance dropped off, and what was underneath was something that I had been refusing to see for 6 years. Preston tried to say something about a misunderstanding. Cora cut him off. "You stole from a 68-year-old retired schoolteacher. You forged her signature on 2 refinance documents, which I have notarized expert analysis on. You attempted to commit her to a facility against her will using a fraudulent power of attorney. Your law license is finished. Your career is finished. The only question now is how much time you do, and whether your wife does any of it with you." She said it like she was reading off a grocery list. Calm. Flat. I had never loved my sister more. They left. They didn't come back. I'd love to tell you there was a big dramatic scene at the door, but there wasn't. They just turned around and walked to the elevator. Maribel was still holding the hydrangeas. I closed the door and I locked it, and I leaned against it, and I slid down until I was sitting on the tile floor, and Cora sat down next to me in her coral blouse on the tile with her bad hip, and she held my hand. I want to skip ahead now because I don't want to dwell on the legal part. Preston is currently serving a sentence in federal custody for wire fraud and elder financial abuse. The state added charges on top of the federal ones. He will be in his late 50s when he comes out. His license to practice law has been permanently revoked. His firm settled with me out of court for what their malpractice insurance would cover, which was substantial. That money went into the trust as well. Maribel was charged as an accessory. She took a plea. She did not serve time, but she is on probation for 5 years and has community service. She is divorced from Preston. She lives in a small apartment in Winooski and works as a paralegal because no other firm in Vermont will hire her as a lawyer's wife, which she no longer is. We have not spoken. She has tried, twice. Letters, I have not opened them. I want to say something about that, because I know how it sounds. I am not bitter. I am not angry most days. What I am is clear. There is a difference between forgiveness and access. I can forgive my daughter for what she did, in the sense that I can stop carrying the weight of it. But that does not mean she gets to be in my life. Trust is not an apology. Trust is a long, slow, daily thing, built over years, and she broke it on purpose for money. If she ever rebuilds it, it will not be by sending letters. It will be by becoming a different person. I don't know if she's capable of that. I hope she is, for her own sake. But I cannot wait to find out. The grandchildren, you might ask. There are 2, a boy and a girl, 10 and 8. I have not seen them in over a year. This is the part that hurts the most, and I will not pretend it doesn't. I send birthday cards. I send Christmas presents through my attorney. I have set up trusts for both of them that they will inherit at 25, regardless of their parents. I hope someday they find me. I hope someday they want to. Cora and I live 2 blocks apart now. We have breakfast 3 times a week at a place called Sue's Diner, where the eggs are real and the coffee is bad, and the waitress, Marjorie, calls us the sisters like we're a famous act. We walk on the beach in the mornings. We read in the afternoons. We have a standing dinner on Friday at her place with 2 other women from the book club, and we drink 1 glass of wine each, and we laugh about things that aren't even that funny. I started volunteering at the senior center 6 months ago. I run a weekly group called Paper and Pen, where we teach women in their 60s and 70s how to read financial documents, how to spot a problematic POA, how to ask questions of an attorney without feeling stupid, how to keep their bank accounts in their own names. I got the idea from another woman at the shelter in Burlington who had been through something similar with her brother. She gave me her number when I left. I called her last fall. She helped me build the curriculum. We have had 43 women come through that group. 2 of them, I am proud to say, have left bad situations. One of them, a retired nurse named Diane, moved out of her son's house, hired her own lawyer, and reclaimed $300,000 he had moved without her permission. She brought me a pie on the day the funds hit her new account, apple with a lattice top. We ate it on my lanai and watched the Gulf. I want to end with something I learned, because the women who watch these videos are mostly women like me, and I owe you something useful. If you are a widow or a divorcee or a woman alone with assets, please do these 3 things. Get an attorney who is not related to you or to your children. Pay them yourself. Have them review every document anyone in your family asks you to sign. Every single one. Keep your bank accounts in your own name, period. There is no good reason to consolidate with an adult child. There is no tax benefit that outweighs the risk. If someone tells you there is, that person is the risk. And make a list of 3 people you can call at 3 in the morning who are not blood relatives. A neighbor, a friend, a former colleague, a pastor, a hairdresser, anyone. People you've known for years who have nothing to gain or lose by helping you. I had Dale, the man in the Carhartt jacket. He was a stranger. He saved my life that night because he was the first person who looked at me without wanting anything. Build a circle that wants nothing from you. That circle is your real family, whether you share blood with them or not. My sister is my real family. She has been all along. I just didn't know it because we were busy living the lives we thought we were supposed to live. I'm 69 now. I have a small condo on the Gulf, a check that I will never spend down, a group of women who teach me mahjong on Tuesdays, and a sister who calls me every night at 9 o'clock to say goodnight. I sleep with the windows open. I wake up to birds. I have not been cold, truly cold, in over a year, and I do not take that lightly. Roland, my husband, used to tell me that the measure of a life isn't what it gives you, it's what you do when it takes things away. I didn't understand him when he said it. I think I do now. If you've made it to the end of this story, thank you for sitting with me. I know it was a long one. If any of this sounded like your life, or your mother's life, or your neighbor's life, please don't wait. Make the phone call. Hire the attorney. Pack the bag. And if you're standing on a porch right now in the cold, listening to a deadbolt slide into place behind you, I want you to know something. You are not done. You are just starting over. I love you. I'm proud of you. Walk to the end of the driveway, and then keep walking. Someone out there is looking for you. I promise. I've thought about that night on the porch more times than I can count, and I keep coming back to one simple truth. Nothing that happened to me happened in a single moment. The deadbolt sliding into place wasn't the betrayal. The betrayal had been building for 8 years, signature by signature, silence by silence. Every time I told myself I was being paranoid, every time I let Preston speak over me at my own kitchen table, every time I watched Maribel sigh and chose to swallow my question instead of asking it, the cold I felt walking down that driveway was the accumulated weight of every small surrender I'd made in the name of being a good mother. That is a hard thing to admit, but I think admitting it is the only thing that saved me afterward. Because here is what I've come to believe. The people who lose everything in their old age usually don't lose it to strangers. They lose it to the ones they love, slowly, through 100 small decisions made out of loneliness and habit and the wish to be agreeable. Preston didn't break into my house. I let him in again and again because he was family. Maribel didn't trick me. I trained myself not to see her clearly, because seeing her clearly would have meant losing my picture of who she was supposed to be. The hardest knowledge a parent can carry is that you can love someone deeply and still need to protect yourself from them. I didn't want that knowledge, so I paid for not wanting it, and I paid in everything I had. What I learned from Cora is that wisdom without action is just regret with better vocabulary. My sister had been to one elder abuse seminar 2 years before any of this happened, and she took notes. That's all. One afternoon, a notepad, a willingness to believe that bad things could happen to women like us. Those notes are why I have a roof tonight. I think about that whenever I'm tempted to put off a hard conversation, a difficult phone call, a doctor's appointment, a meeting with an attorney. The future arrives faster than you think, and when it does, the only thing you'll have is what you prepared. If I could go back and tell the woman standing on that porch one thing, I wouldn't tell her it would get better. She wouldn't believe me. I'd tell her that her instincts were always right, and that she was allowed to trust them, and that being a good mother never meant being a quiet one. I'd tell her that strength isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision to act anyway, with shaking hands and cheap boots in the wrong coat, while your own daughter watches from the window. I'd tell her she was worth saving, and I'd tell her that somewhere in Florida her older sister was already preparing to come find her. Because that is what love actually looks like when it isn't pretending.